We are doing a live episode of our top returning Bulldogs series here on UGAsports.com. Thanks for watching on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. Wherever you're watching this, make sure you follow, subscribe, like, all the different things that can make it where you can see all the content that we're putting out over at UGAsports.com, which you need to be a member there as well to be part of the legendary Dog Mint and the Vault to know what's going on in recruiting. This series, though, we're breaking down Georgia's top returning players based off of PFF grades from the 2021 season. We give this caveat at the beginning of every time, Brent. This is not our personal, we think these guys are Georgia's best players, though at this stage, I think there's some similarities in what that order would be. As a whole, though, PFF looks at every play and comes up with this grade at the end of the season through its formula, and it's saying that based on how the performance went last year, here's Georgia's best players. In this series, what we're doing is we're looking at the ones, for the most part, that were above 70 as a grade and then had a sample size that seemed relevant, not just 2 or 3 plays.
And the beautiful part about, we've started at 23 and we're finally in the top 5. And the best part about the top 5, this isn't where we stretched any sort of snap count, no stretching whatsoever. These are legit, like all kinds of snaps, lots of plays to look at, lots of things to just sort of be a part of what we're looking at here in these top 5 guys.
And by way of introduction, if you're just finding us and you're wanting to check out more about Stetson Bennett in Georgia, that's Brent Rollins. He does stuff with the Pro Football Focus, but also with UGAsports.com. I'm Dayne Young. We kind of do this series during the season called Film Don't Lie, where we pair together the data that he sees and collects and then kind of his coaching brain and then my video and journalism background. Just makes a cool little pairing. And we're friends outside of this. So we live now, 10, 15 minutes apart? Used to be a little bit further, but now it's closer. And you have internet that works, which is great because it
makes it even better.
That was not the case.
That was an issue.
I promise you for the rest of his life, Stetson Bennett will live in a place that has internet, and that's because he is our number 5 player that we are talking about based on these PFF grades. You see his grade here, Brent, and I think the line I always come back to when I talk about Stetson Bennett, it's the Rodney Dangerfield. It's no respect. Still doesn't get respect. He should now.
Yes, he should. And you think about, what is he, the first one? I can't remember. He's the first one since that's returning national championship winning quarterback. Like nobody else in college football has that.
The last national championship quarterback to return.
McCarron, maybe something like that. I think maybe that was one.
Gosh, wow.
But you're talking.
He's definitely the first
decade.
in the NIL era.
Yes.
Capitalize.
And he is that. He is independent of anything that happens this season. He will go down in sort of Georgia lore for last season and what he did and just his story, because it is that. It is a phenomenal story. And we're looking at someone, and what's beautiful, I think, or beautiful, but also interesting about him is that you're talking about from an age perspective, an older quarterback. Like Kyler Murray just got how many millions of dollars with his contract? He's like 80 days older than Stetson. When the season opens, he'll be older than, I think, almost a third of the NFL's starting quarterbacks. Yet, he's still a young guy, because when you think of passing attempts, I think he's got like 400 and something, 470 something in his career. Bryce Young had 550 last year alone. So it's you're talking about this sort of cagey veteran who's, a almost 25-year-old guy, but yet still young from a playing experience standpoint.
Class of 2017, when you look back at his rivals' recruiting profile, he was 6 foot, 175 pounds from Blackshear, Georgia, Pierce County. Most of the time when we've done this during the series, Brent, we see Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Florida, Florida State, LSU. That wasn't the case for Stetson Bennett. We're looking at Old Dominion and Georgia Southern and Mercer in Middle Tennessee, and we know he almost went to Louisiana to play for Billy Napier, but he decided to bypass those scholarship offers and to go be a walk-on at Georgia. We all kind of know the story from there, but for him to do that took a lot of confidence in himself to say, I could play some places, but kind of want to play there.
And you think about, I think that sort of speaks to him and everything he's about from day one. The utter belief in himself. And to be that level of quarterback, you absolutely, and really that level of athlete at any point, you have to have that beyond a shadow of a doubt belief in yourself. And I think you definitely see somebody, and you see him play as if he's somebody who believes in his ability beyond a shadow of a doubt.
So from 6 foot 175 in high school to what Georgia Dog says is 5'11", 190 now. And
taller than Bryce Young, though.
that is without a doubt. Coach Donnan said that he asked people at SEC Media Days just to look at how tall they were.
Yes.
They could go from
Don't forget that.
And we have to remember with Stetson Bennett, he played the Baker Mayfield role in the practice for the Rose Bowl. Mel Tucker would rave about him, and then he would go on to be Georgia's backup, then go transfer to Jones College in Mississippi, and then come back to Georgia really in a heroic role, I would say, because if you go back to Arkansas, what was it during the COVID year, right? If you go back to the Arkansas game.
Well, the previous, I mean, he comes back in 2019 as Jake Fromm's backup, which you think, and then he's still there. And even though Mathis and others are sort of looked at, and Mathis gets to start in that game, he comes in and saves the day. But the beautiful part, or the interesting part, I think, about him coming back in 2019 is, where did that scholarship come from that went to him? It's that guy that went to Ohio State. So, it's funny how
Justin Fields, for people that didn't follow.
Yes, that him leaving leads to Stetson returning, leads to an eventual national championship for Georgia. So the story is just, it's as good as it gets. Yeah. But what are we talking about? We're talking about this season. So
yeah, someone's going to write it one day, but that story obviously became even greater after national championship win, which, look, we can be frank about this. As we watch this film, the debate last season among Georgia's fan base, and I would even say internally among the team, was, I don't know about the quarterback spot. Maybe it should be Daniels or
the fan base is speaking in the comments already still.
Yeah. And look, I was a proponent for Stetson because he could move, and I thought his arm was good enough, and he proved that to be true. I don't have to relitigate all that. All I'm going to say is part of his story is that even when he's making the runs at the title game, there were a lot of people that didn't believe he could do it. And, for whatever reason, that's a part of who he is. Not the biggest guy, not the strongest guy, not all those knots are there, but what is there is that ring and that legacy now.
Yes, and very much. And I think what the interesting part about him, and yes, I see the circle on the screen as we go through this. Woo! So we're good to go there.
We're good technology wise.
There's a world where he's still just getting better every year. When you look at his turnover worthy play percentage, something we'll talk about on here as we look at some of these plays, getting better each time. When we look at his ability to throw the ball down the field, getting better in accuracy. That, I think, from 2020 to then 2021, that was the biggest leap for him, is that the amount of just uncatchable balls that had no chance of being caught by the receiver drastically decreased to the point where his kind of what we at PFF look at as, terms of uncatchable and then inaccurate, kind of both, no chance of being caught. That was one of the lowest in the country, in the top 10 in the country. And that, when you give the playmakers that Georgia has, when you give them ability to make those plays and give them a chance, and that's what he did, that's when you get the numbers that you get.
I did forget to get our banner going at the bottom so people could see where Stetson's been ranks in comparison to who we've seen. So let's do that. And then I'll go back to our full screen share here.
It's a beautiful list, by the way, for those of you who haven't checked out the UGA Sports YouTube page. There's a lot of videos, and it's rolling with content right now with recruiting season, with the call-in show, with Coach Donnan's UGA Sports Live. So lots of fun on the channel. But now we get to talk about Stetson.
Let's dive into this film here. We know where Stetson is in the field, so I'm not going to circle him every time, but we'll point out things as we see them. This against UAB, not the greatest competition, but he did what he needed to do.
Well, I remember we were doing the watch-along for this game, and we missed the first TD because of ESPN, I think. But when you think back to this season, given the pressure that was in his face on this throw and the distance with which he put this ball in the in the money area and kind of tracked it, it might be one of the better throws he had all season. Because we highlighted Broderick Jones' big whiff on this earlier in the series, but that is pressure in the face. And now, granted, Arian had a good step and on everybody, as he much will any point in the season when he's on the field, but phenomenal throw. And when you look at him on the deep ball, 93 passing grade, I think it was 56% completion, adjusted completion, which accounts for like drops. 880 yards, 10 TDs, 2 picks. The guy could throw the ball down the field.
Well, the thing that I would point out here, just in terms of accuracy that you were talking about, look where this ball is. I mean, yes, look, I know there's all the space here. Like, fine, I get that. This is still thrown over his outside shoulder like it should be. Like that, That is a safe throw, even in tight coverage. And to do that when you don't necessarily have to, because there's such the buffer here, I think that's a sign of a quarterback that knows what he's doing.
And when there's a pressure in your face like it was in this play.
Yeah.
I
was trying
think
to see if I could see Roddy or any of our friends down there as photographers. Tough to tell.
I think that the deep ball to Arian Smith will be something that he's going to have a lot of fun with. I would venture to say there's going to be a game where the play is legit. All right, Stetson, let's see how far you really can throw the ball and see, in a game where they know they're going to beat something, Kent State, a Sanford or something like that. But let's just see how far you can throw it and see if you can outthrow Arian Smith. I think that's going to happen once this season.
Arian Smith is totally the guy that can wind up with a stat line of like 3 catches for 174 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like,
the Moss
totally
on Thanksgiving Day stat line. Randy Moss on rookie year Thanksgiving Day stat line.
Yep. Here we go. This is against Arkansas at Sanford Stadium. We know how this was a bit of a bloodbath for the Razorbacks.
Yes, and I think this is maybe his great, outside of the ability to use his legs, his ability to kind of the touch passes. I think he's much like a point guard, kind of leading the receiver in basketball, not really necessarily putting the zip, tight window type throw, but just putting the ball at a spot. Does a phenomenal job with that. Sees the one-on-one coverage that he has, sees the safety 7, Fouché for Arkansas going to the middle of the field, staying with A.D. Mitchell. And just puts it on the money.
I love this angle because I'm going to pause it
right
as Stetson's throwing, and you see this all the time. So I'm not saying this is like super special, but like this is what a good quarterback does: is see this as it's happening and say, "Look at Kenny Mack's momentum. It's going to beat this guy here. So all I have to do is drop it on this side because there's no one else around here to deal with that."
Yep, throwing with anticipation, and I think a lot of times in man coverage, it's easier to do when you see some form of man type coverage. And I think what he's going to have to do better is anticipating the zones and where there'll be holes in zones, or anticipating, and we'll show 2 different plays later, at least one that you'll see, where anticipating that just a little sooner, because this is a clear out for Kenny Mack and we're going to throw the wheel. But it's still something that he does. When he sees it, he throws it well in throwing with anticipation.
This is quite the little flick of the wrist, as they say. And then it does help when you have Brock Bowers. But, the other thing I see here is against Auburn in this play. Hey, look at McConkey right here, too. Multiple things they could have done.
I mean, and obviously we're showing this throw versus the absolute perfect throw against Auburn to Ladd that we showed earlier in the series with Ladd. But this, to me, is one of those where this is a great job by the quarterback of throwing the completion. And this, when I would talk to quarterbacks and teach quarterbacks and coach quarterbacks, throw the completion. It doesn't necessarily have to be the on the money all the time. And with this one, McCreary at the corner comes off at the last minute on this play, and if he sees it or if Stetson puts this ball down the field, tries to hit him in stride kind of throw, that's a pick.
You have to throw to the spot, right?
Yes, he's throwing to the hole, throwing to the window, and just, all right, let's go get the completion. We don't need the yak. We don't need on this play. We're not going to get it. And because Bowers clearly, on the out and up, beat the defender, 19, I think it was. But go throw the completion. And he did a much better job of that compared to 2020.
Takes the vision to see this hole and know that like my job is to not lead my tight end, like we were saying, because if you lead him, in his full momentum, what you're saying is I'm going to lead you right to this guy.
Well, it's and it's a little bit of anticipation because McCreary at the corner, he sort of followed the receiver into the middle of the field, leaving that void. But as the ball's in the air, he's peeling back. And you got to have that, like I said, throw with that anticipation a little bit that you have to have.
Also against Auburn.
This is so key. And like you said at the beginning, he is a running threat. He's not just a guy who happens to run. He is a threat to run the football and make big plays running the football. And it's so vital to the running game. So vital.
Aaron Murray broadcasted this game, and I was watching it back to kind of pull this video. You could hear the jealousy in his voice of like, man, I wish I could have done that. And he wasn't the runner that Stetson is. So I'm not even saying that, but I'm just saying quarterbacks like doing this. It's fun.
Oh, yeah. It's football. It's the game. And when you think about, especially somebody like Stetson playing where he played high school football, he probably ran the ball all the time in high school. So it's a must to their offense. It's vital to the running game. And like I said, the biggest thing is threat. Looking at just his rushing numbers on design QB runs like this. This is kind of this is not a scramble. This is not a drop back to pass and then I go run. On design runs like this, 27 carries, 160 yards, almost 8 yards a carry. On scrambles, he was 19 carries for 187, almost 10 yards a carry. He had 14 runs over 10 yards. He had 21 first downs rushing. Like, that is a legit threat at the quarterback position and just, to me, vital to his overall game.
Well, and Georgia runs more RPOs than it ever has before. And for an RPO to work, you have to have the threat of the quarterback keeping it, or even an option read. And in previous, I guess, generations of Georgia's offense, just haven't had that.
No.
And so in this particular scenario, yeah, I think Stetson's probably thinking he's going to keep this most of the time, but he still has his eyes here looking on this side to see what kind of lane am I going to have if I keep this. And then he can give it to Zamir on the inside. But then also, here comes Kieris on a little bubble out here. Like, there are all the options, and he's going to make that decision quickly.
And he can do something with it once he does. And even on busted plays. I mean, we saw that in the college football playoff semifinal against Michigan. Just quick decisions, busted plays, making plays with his legs. And we talked about that before the national championship game, or before the playoffs, really, when we were kind of previewing the playoffs and even the national championship game. For when he breaks the pocket, run, because it's a legit threat. Like, it's his, to me, it's oftentimes his best decision. And I think that is why I think you're going to see more of that this season than even more so than what you saw a season ago.
And how about in the open field where most people get down right there? He's like, no, I can get more yards out of this.
Yeah, I think this is what, a 30-yard run, maybe something like that.
But like, that makes a big difference. And I think a lot of quarterbacks don't take that risk in doing that. Bennett is fearless. And I think some people probably think in a bit of a risky way. I think you want that from your quarterback. If he sees daylight, go get it.
And I think to Mr. David West, former New Orleans Hornets player, power forward, probably not actually, but said Stetson would have gotten us an offensive TD against Clemson because of the run threat. Possibly, it would have been possible. It would have been much more part of the game plan. That's for sure, and it did become part of the game plan.
Though I will say, and I know Georgia played some good teams, they didn't play defense as good as Clemson's after that.
No,
and especially
game one.
Healthy.
Yeah, game one.
That Clemson defense was the only one that you looked at all season and said, yeah, they probably were up there around the Georgia territory if all things are equal and they don't get injured. But Georgia had a little bit more depth and it showed. But Clemson was great too. Okay, defense was not overall.
Yeah,
Stetson's not perfect, so we're not saying that we're gushing over him. Yes, but it's mitigating the catastrophic mistakes, and he's finding ways to do that, but it still does show up.
And that's when you look at, and I asked this question on Twitter in the spring and then wrote an entire article about it, but what does Georgia need from Stetson Bennett in this fall, 2022? Given the playmakers, given the offensive weapons they're going to have, this is what you can't have. Just absolute, what it is what it is. This is a knucklehead decision.
What's he seeing here?
all bad to me. All bad. Because if you're going to, by the way, this is first down, play action, take a shot. This is if somebody's open, I'm taking that shot. But let's not take the shot to Mr. Fitzpatrick on a wheel route. If you're going to just throw it up at least to the receiver at Burton or Bauer. If it's Bowers, throw it up to Bowers. But this should be like Moxon in Varsity Blues when he's finding the mascot, like to chuck at on the sidelines. This ball should be hitting the guy with the yellow stripes down there on the sideline, or somebody that's hanging out over there, as opposed to, this is live to play another day.
You're playing in Jacksonville, throw it in the river.
Yep. And this is one that, he would 100% want to have back. And this is one that he got picked. Like, it happened earlier in the year against Arkansas. They dropped it. It happened against Vanderbilt, I think, and they dropped it once, that kind of thing. But
in the theme of redemption, it didn't. The next drive, he got back out there, and here's what we see.
Yes, and I think, like you said, the competitive part of him, the belief in oneself, that the bad stuff in the past, and then just throw an absolute beautiful ball.
I think you can say this might be his best throw of the season.
You're maybe not most important, but definitely best. Because we're going to look at most important here soon.
It's this or Ladd over the top against Auburn. Both of those coming after kind of poor throws, leading up to them.
Yeah, and you think about what Georgia did this past season on play action. It's where they got their big plays. He was 12.8 yards per attempt on play action, 12 touchdowns, 4 picks, 6 big-time throws. Like, that's where they made their money, and that's where they're going to – and this season too, that's where they're going to make their money, because especially with the 3 tight ends, they're going to try to run the football. But you continue to make throws like this, you're going to play a lot of football.
Yeah, I don't care what you think about Stetson Bennett or project his future to be. This is a professional football throw. This is an NFL quality pass.
100%. I mean, that's a 50-yard throw in the air on a dime in the one spot it can be.
To a spot to where it's going to be inbounds or it's going to be incomplete, but it's not going to be dangerous. That's what you ask for from your professional quarterbacks.
Right, and I think that's what he has to, like you say, that professional, that word is key. That's, to me, what he has to be this year, because it's what he is. I mean, it's not like his class load is going to be heavy. I mean, he's basically, he's taking care, he's getting his NIL taken care of. He's basically a professional quarterback playing another season of college football this year. And
a lot like Joe Burrow in 19.
Yes, 100% like that, where you've got so much time to devote to being, just that, the absolute best at what you can do. And if he does that this year for Georgia, the sky's the limit to me for this offense and this team. It already is, but it's even more so if that's the case. And you eliminate the bonehead type plays, the attention to detail type things, footwork, mechanics, not getting loose, that kind of stuff.
Now, I will say that this is the first season that he has entered as Georgia's definitive, no doubt starting quarterback. And there's a different persona and a different level of responsibility and a different weight that comes with that. And hopefully he's mature enough to handle it, and Georgia gets the good result they want, and he has a fantastic experience. But it is a different experience than what he's had before.
Because, especially from a motivational perspective, last season it's clearly I'm proving everyone wrong, and now he's kind of done that. Now it's all right, keep doing it, kind of thing. And when we talk about attention to detail, when your offensive coordinator dials up touchdown plays for you, you have to take advantage. This one, I think you can kind of chalk up to, this is the second play of the national championship, by the way. Chalk up the nerves a little bit, but this is a touchdown that they straight up, or a humongous play that they straight up missed. This is the one where he has the snafu with the fumble.
So tell me what you're saying, the touchdown that was missed.
All right, so right after he tosses the ball, right here, right there. Let's see, right there. He feels that little bit of pressure, and all right, early in the game, all right, I feel pressure. I'm just going to go try to make something positive. But Sawyer is in perfect position to block this guy, and he ends up blocking him. Great. Everything else is protected. A little slide step here, and then Jermaine Burton is accelerating on about the 30-yard line with the defensive back having his hips and turned the wrong way. Like a slide and then a chuck, and that's a big-time play. But again, nerves early, and then the absolute fortune of all fortunate bounces.
I'll play it full motion so people can see kind of Burton's break here right
Boom.
there.
He's open. That's like I said, that's a touchdown. Battle's angle is not good enough. He's seeing the route crossing the middle of the field. That's at least a big play, no less.
So that's an example. Like Georgia, like Stetson Bennett had a productive play. Now that was a mess getting up to that point. If you remember, a couple of delay of game penalties, and it was just a mess to start the game in the national championship. And he had a really positive play there, but like you said, could have been more. And so, he rectified that later. But you don't get many missed opportunities in a national championship game.
And I think a lot of that you could probably 99.9% of that probably chalk up the nerves just as much as anything.
Yeah,
but this is the next play. This is the third down. So it was 3rd and 5. His run got it to 3rd and 5. Then he had a false start penalty, made it 3rd and 10. And he breaks the pocket and just, what are you doing? This ball was almost picked. Ladd is in no position to make a first down. This is one where we talked about how much his legs and his mobility helped, especially when you looked at the comparison of him to Daniels. But he was actually awful outside the pocket. Outside the pocket plays, 45 passing grade, 32.9 passer rating. Just atrocious. When he was pressured, 43.3 passing grade, 5 TDs, 3 picks, just a little over 50% completion.
So you're saying he needs to either stay between the tackles or tuck and run.
Well, his passing grade inside the pocket was 88.1. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it's one where it's the decision-making part. Like we saw this in the play in the college football semifinal against Michigan when he broke the pocket sort of close to their own end zone and just chucked it in the middle of the field. Like Monken was screaming every 4-letter word in the book on that play from the booth. Fact, by the way. Know that as a fact. And it's he just has to eliminate those. And I think Roddy calls it bonehead maybe. He said on the podcast, the bonehead plays or knucklehead plays, however you want to call them. But these can't happen. And there's also with this play, it's hard to see on this look. It's even hard to see on the all 20, a little bit harder to see on the all 22. But he looks the wrong way. Like his eyes on snap go to A.D. Mitchell. And A.D. Mitchell had a little safety help over the top and a corner who initially played press, but then opened his hips up and had his eyes in the backfield. If he has his eyes, and I think that's something that another year in the system with Monken, if he has his eyes in the backfield, he goes to the right side of the field. Ladd on the break here, right at the break, is open for the first down. Ball should come out like slide, ball come out versus what actually happened.
Even here, his eyes are facing this way, and I'd say there's a decent shot. If you toss it to James Cook, he's going to get close to a first down.
And it's at least we'll take that. You take that over the turnover worthy play that happened.
Now, I will say, I think that Stetson having a whole nother year as being the guy and getting all the reps, like right here, it's obvious that Stetson is still trying to throw this football and he ends up trying to go to Ladd McConkey. But it's also obvious that Darnell Washington is not trying to receive this football at all. He still thinks that he's blocking on this play, which I'm not saying that he's wrong in that. But what I'm saying is that those things kind of develop that backyard football the more that you play together. Because if you're going to toss this ball up to a spot over here, Darnell's the guy you'd go to over Ladd McConkey because he's, 8'7" or whatever he is. And so to me, I look at it and say, if I've got LeBron James out there and he can bail me out of this play, I'll give that a shot sometimes. But you're right. He should have just thrown it away and lifted it, play another down, all that good stuff. I'm just saying that there is more continuity that is needed with Stetson Bennett and then some of these skill guys. I think you'll see some of that this year.
Yes, and that's when you think about areas of, hey, can he still get better? Like, he can 100% still get better. He's not like a finished, it's just, hey, this is the finished product. He is what he is. No, he can still get better in a lot of areas. And I think experience, reps as the first quarterback. By the way, third straight year in the same system. Like those things are going to matter this season.
In watching this, the other thing that I noticed, and this is so silly, but like every high school football coach would rave here about Mr. Warren McClendon picking up the ball and handing it to the referee.
Here you go, sir.
That's a small thing, but I guarantee you some high school coach out there's like, yep, I like what he just said right there. That's a good one.
There you go. That's right. Play through the whistle, respect the opponent, all that kind of stuff.
I think we know what's coming here.
Yeah, this is as good as it gets. And you think about what happened post fumble, or the weirdest play maybe I've ever seen, especially in a big game like that Alabama's guy picked up a millimeter from the sideline on that play. But this is a free play, jump off sides. You get perfect quarterback play here. See it, slide step, reset, throw, throw the ball down the field, give your guy a chance. You got Cook, just the block of the century from the running back position.
I think that block may have elevated his NFL status just in one play.
Oh, 100%. I would agree with that. I mean, he had plenty, but the magnitude of that block, because Jordan or Christian Harris that game was on another level, and he was chasing him down, but completely takes him out, and then A.D. Mitchell going and getting it, and what's amazing about that, and that's good presence. I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but Mitchell actually going and trying to catch this ball.
Yeah,
because early in the season, especially. And oftentimes throughout the season, you'd see Mitchell try to go draw a pass interference penalty. But this time he actually went and got it, knowing that, hey, this is a free play. Let's just go take a shot. And obviously it's a touchdown type play, but it's beautiful all the way around.
So funny how football can work sometimes, right? Because obviously I think this pass goes there because it is a free play. I don't think Stetson tries this if the flag is not there and he doesn't know that the offsides happened, because – and I say that, and I'll back it up so you can see, but this is Brock Bowers right here, and he's got a lot of space.
Yes.
Right in this area. Like, if this is just a normal play, non-flag, not taking a chance, not having the wherewithal to be able to take that chance, knowing there's no penalty, there's no risk in doing so, this ball's probably going to go to Brock Bowers on this.
Yep, crosser in the middle.
Crosser. Yep. And it would be a completion, and it'd be a first down, but who knows what happens after that. Like, there's a chance that one of the greatest plays in Georgia football history only happened because Alabama got offsides.
Hey.
And ain't that football?
That's it. We talked about this amongst our UGA sports colleagues. Like how, looking back, just what's the biggest play of that game? There's so many to choose from. Like me, it's Ringo chasing Cameron Latou down and preventing the touchdown there. They only give up a field goal. Like it's that one. It's Trayvon Walker chasing down a guy that Ajayi Hall on a screen that maybe a touchdown doesn't happen. It's William Poole's pass breakup on 3rd and 12. It's Cook's big run. Like so many humongous plays in that game that make that game go either way. But like we said at the beginning, Georgia has something that no other team in the college football has: national championship winning quarterback. Back in 2022.
We'll have a few more points that we get to, but because we're doing this live, I do want to include some of the comments from the people that are watching us on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. So
I agree with Stan Vans there.
Stephen Burton, thanks for checking in.
Northern Kentucky. I like it.
Golf and Garrison. Kevin Cook. Appreciate y'all watching. Josh Gillum says Stetson sucks. And you know what? You're a hater, because I don't think you can say he sucks anymore. And I don't think he really ever has sucked. You don't get to that level being that bad.
No.
And then Josh says, why didn't he get Heisman consideration? The defense carried him. Okay, he's not going to get Heisman consideration this year either. We'll talk about that in a minute. Garrett Sr.
Or is he?
That's a lot.
Or is he going to get Heisman consideration? Because I talked about this at the end of the last one we did, and I mentioned it on the dog vent. You look at Monken's career as an offensive coordinator. I think this might only be the second time he's actually had the same QB for 3 years in a row. I think he had it with Mullins at Southern Miss. But outside of that, he's been in different places. Maybe I don't think Jameis was there every year that he was in Tampa, but in that year with Mullins, I think had like 4,300 yards. They had 2,000-yard backs and maybe 1,000-yard receiver. Like their offense went nuts that year. What if that's the way for Georgia this year with the playmakers that we've highlighted on this list, and by the way, have still yet to highlight? There's a couple more. You look at the tight ends, the receivers, all the depth that is there, the backs. What if this offense just goes scorched earth on everyone, and Stetson puts up a 3,500 yard, 35 touchdown season in the regular season, by the way, which only 4 QBs in the Power 5 did last year. Because get some pushback on the numbers part, but he could do that and get rolling. And just because of distributing the ball and the playmaking and the diversity with which this offense can exist, that could very well happen. And if that happens, and you're talking about a Georgia team that's, maybe even if they slip up 11-1 and going to the SEC championship, or 12-0 going to the SEC championship game, and then they go and beat Bryce Young in Alabama in the SEC championship game with those numbers,
yeah,
he's 100%. He's at least in New York. I don't know if he's winning it, but he's at least in New York.
Marlon Green says, I think Stetson Bennett will be hard to cover. His legs are crazy. I think the offensive line will give him time to move the ball. Going to be hard to cover all those athletes in the open field. I think all that's true. Georgia's offense is loaded this season, and it's an easy schedule. So you're not going to be playing a ton of defenses. They're going to tax it too hard. And even if you have injuries, I would say there's only 1 or 2 spots on offense that you don't absolutely love the depth that you have. And even at those spots, you're probably fine. I think if Sedrick Van Pran got hurt, the offensive line gets significantly worse.
Yes.
They just don't have a backup center that is of that caliber.
Well, Erickson would probably play center in that. I think if that in
likely, and I don't think he's near Van Pran's caliber.
Right, I agree with that.
At center, and now that's a compliment as much of how good I think Sedrick Van Pran is, because I think he's going to be in the NFL next year. Let's see.
That's possible. It's 100% possible.
The chat's funny because this has really just turned into like one person hating on Stetson Bennett, and then everyone else being like, "Dude, what are you watching? Just won the title."
Well, you think about even last year, by the way. If you combine JT and Stetson's numbers last year, it was 3,600 yards, 36 touchdowns, 10 picks. Like the numbers were there, and I think when we think about the Heisman and the numbers part of it, it's from an offensive perspective, their starting field position this year will probably not be anything like it was last year. So your drives are going to be a little bit longer. And I think you're going to have to play the offense is going to play into a little bit longer in games maybe.
That is one thing that hurt Georgia in some of the awards was that the first team, offense and defense, didn't always play, even fourth quarters. But
right.
Likely going to change this year. I did put this on Twitter this morning. And so good old blind resume for a quarterback here. So I want to check this out. So quarterback A, I wonder if I can make this a little bit bigger for folks. There we go. Quarterback A in this scenario, this is last year's stats, 66%, 233 completions, 8 yards per passing attempt, 24 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 376 rushing yards, and 9 rushing touchdowns. Quarterback B, and I'll zoom out so people can compare a little bit. Quarterback B, 64% completion percentage, more yards per attempt. So that means a bit more explosive, about the same total number of yards. More touchdowns, fewer interceptions. So safer and more explosive, not as many rushing touchdowns, but about the same amount of rushing yards. So this tells you that quarterback A was a running threat in the red zone. Quarterback B, not as much of a running threat in the red zone. Quarterback A, Heisman odds are plus 5,000. Quarterback B, Heisman odds are plus 10,000. And quarterback A is currently projecting to be a first-round pick in next year's NFL draft. Player B, most people would say undrafted. I'm comparing. Player A is Will Levis. Player B is Stetson Bennett. I just think it's really silly because if you look at what they've done and their actual resumes, very similar in passing. Stetson a little safer. Levis a little bit of a better runner. But overall, pretty darn comparable. And so I don't understand why the hype train is on one other than he's taller and then not on the other, because I think both are good players. I think Stetson is more proven. You'd have no idea that that's the case based on the hype heading into the season.
Yeah, and it's the unfortunate part about the draft process, right? Is that the measurables and projection, much like the NBA draft, especially early in the season, like it's based upon measurables and projections. And by the way, Will Levis actually had a higher passing grade this past season than Stetson did. But I actually, one thing that's going to be interesting for Levis this year at Kentucky is they have a new offensive coordinator who, Liam Cohen now goes back to the Rams, and they get a new guy who is of the same ill, like the Shanahan-McVay system, but it's somebody who's never called plays before again. And I think Levis last year, there was only one QB in the SEC, and I think it was Will Rogers, and that's mainly because of the checkdowns that they do in their offense, but only one QB that had more sort of open or wide open pass attempts in terms of percentage of wide open or open pass attempts. So if the offensive coordinator doesn't do sort of the similar things that he does, and Levis has to make more and more, contested throws, who knows? But he also could, step up in a big time way and have a sort of, I don't think he's going to have a Kyle Trask like ascension from a statistic standpoint, just because Kentucky, I don't think is going to. Their offense is not built for that.
Yeah,
but I do agree that
like Georgia's old offense with the ground and pound, like they want to use
play action.
Yeah,
in play action, and that's how you're going to get your big plays. But it's the hype train is definitely real. But we talk about this when we're in this sort of what if scenario, and I'm talking about, hey, what if Georgia's offense does what I think it's going to do and breaks records for points and yardage, and potentially has a 3,000-yard passer, 1,000-yard rusher, and 1,000-yard receiver, something I doubt that they've ever had. I didn't check. But, and Stetson goes and beats Bryce Young in the SEC championship game, crazy world, wins the Heisman Trophy. It's him and Herschel Walker in terms of the pantheon of Georgia football ever.
Yeah.
National championship winning quarterback, Heisman, there's a world where that happens.
And he might have, at that point, the greatest story in the history of college football, period.
Yep. Well, but, hyperbole aside, what does Georgia have going into 2022? Tons of weapons, an offense that, to me, should do whatever it is they want to do because of those weapons.
Marion's watching in Rutledge. Thanks for doing that. That's
appreciate you, Marion.
Near our neck of the woods, a little bit south of us.
But
20 miles. My final point on this and how Stetson compares to other quarterbacks in the conference, when you're seeing people, and this is a media thing right now to try to turn the hype, right, of when you're seeing the quarterbacks in the SEC ranked, and I've done this, so I'm not pointing fingers. It's what we do. We try to rank things. We try to put context in things. We try to set the table and create some good discussion too. Bryce Young is the best quarterback in the SEC. There's really not a debate about that.
I don't think gap.
I don't think there's a debate on who number 2 is, but I think Will Rogers is really, 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 really good, especially in that system.
And this guy is 3.
And when you start seeing the Levises or, by God, Spencer Rattler above Stetson Bennett, that's just some people not knowing what they're talking about or they're haters. That's all. Because Stetson Bennett is way more proven than a Rattler. And obviously, I think the results last year show you him against Levis. Stetson heading into the season is, a top 3 quarterback in the league. Period.
I 100% agree. And that's actually, if you had to ask me what's my list, those are the top 3. Young, Rogers, and Rogers not necessarily, projecting the NFL type stuff, but for what they do and what he's asked to do, the accuracy is next level in decision making.
That should be quite a fun ball game when Georgia goes to Starkville. And it won't be that may be the hardest one on Georgia's schedule by the time it's all said and done. Which probably tells you how easy Georgia's schedule is.
I think Tennessee will be an intriguing game. I think Kentucky will be an intriguing game. Florida's always just Florida. And so, there's possible bumps at South Carolina will be interesting just because they'll probably be feeling good about themselves early. But I don't think it's going to matter with this offense. I think the offense to me is, and I know Coach Don is kind of said some of these similar things on the UGA Sports Live program, but I just think they're going to be able to do whatever they want. And I think you've got Monken with another year of focusing and learning and evolving in the college game as it is now. There's with Gilbert, Bowers, Washington, and all the play. It's
and remember what Monken
so much
said
fun
at the Orange Bowl leading up to that game, because usually coordinators don't speak. Like, they have a long time in the season we don't hear from them at all. And he was very candid in saying that I made some mistakes in underestimating Stetson Bennett and overlooking what his talents are. I didn't see some of the things that came to be. And I thought that took a lot of candor and a lot of guts for a coach to say that, because a lot of coaches don't want to appear like they're wrong. And I think he felt like he did a disservice to Stetson Bennett, and he was proven wrong, like a lot of fans were. For him to be able to say that, celebrate a national championship with him, and then get another year together, man, that's got potential to be really special. Potential to. It might not. It may go off the rails, and man, if we have to have quarterback chatter again this year, that's not going to be fun for anybody. But
well, you think
all the
what would
signs
make
point
that
to that never happening this year.
Well, what would make that happen? It's
turnovers.
It's the opposite of being professional. It's being careless with the football and, sort of turnovers, relaxed in your environment.
A crappy leader. That's the only things.
Yep. Work ethic things. It's just sort of, the coasting or any things that you would hope don't happen. But for it to, like you're talking about, if that's the case, that's the only way that I think happens. But I just don't. The kid to me is too competitive for that to happen.
Yeah, same. Well, this has been a fun episode of our Top Returning Bulldogs series. We'll probably do one or two more of these live as we can to wrap it up, because, like I said, we've done now, what's my math? 18 episodes, and we have 4 more to go. 23 on this list. If you see these names that have been scrolling on the bottom of the screen and you want to see our features on them, it's on our YouTube page, on our Facebook page. Just kind of scroll back or search their names, Top Returning Bulldog. Javon Bullard, for example, who I think is a potential breakout star for the Dogs this year. I really like his potential to be a contributor there. We've done at least 15 minutes on every player that you've seen on the bottom of the screen. Really proud of our series. We've gotten really good feedback from people saying, we appreciate y'all taking the time to kind of focus in on this one person that way. And we're going to keep doing this in off seasons as we go forward. But we have 4 more left on this list. A couple names that I think people won't be surprised to see. We mentioned Brock Bowers in this podcast, and you haven't seen him at the bottom, so you can expect he'll be high up the list there. Kevin Cook, man, you commented at the beginning, commented at the end. Thanks for watching.
That's what I'm talking about.
Appreciate that. And that's a nice drawing that you have in your photo over there on Facebook. That should get some likes.
That's pretty sweet. Yes.
I don't know the artist behind that, but whoever that is should get some love, because that's a very, very buff bulldog. All right, so we're going to wrap up this episode. Brent, thanks so much for doing this. We'll be back on our YouTube channel for 4, 3, 2, and number 1 as we wrap up our Top Returning Bulldog series. And by the time we're done with that, we're talking about it's season time.
It's go time.
And we've got new video to break down, which I think we're both craving for that. He's Brent Rollins. I'm Dayne Young. We call through Film Don't Lie at UGAsports.com. If you will, go check out the site over there. Subscribe on YouTube. That's the easiest way to find our stuff. It's completely free to you. If you want to go join the Dog Den, it'll be the best decision you've ever made to join the most legacied Georgia group on the internet. It's where all the Georgia fans are, especially the crazy Georgia fans, the ones just want to talk about it like all the time. That's the ones we kind of cater to. We like them. They're our friends. And they're crazy and weird, and we argue with them, and they argue with us, and that's family, right? That's family in Georgia. All right, we're going to wrap this up. Thanks for watching. Everyone have a good night.